today we got the Garcia report, or within the last 24 hours it came out. Speculation as to how it got released, why it got released in full. There's a lot of information in there. There's a lot of intrigue in terms of Garcia himself, resigning after writing the report. Just brief people, first of all, who may not know what this is about, and then let's talk a little bit about some of the details that are in there.
Okay. In 2014, there was a report submitted by Michael Garcia. He is a former U.S. attorney, and he was serving as FIFA's chief ethics investigator. And he investigated all of the dealings for the next two World Cups, the Russian World Cup and the Qatar World Cup. Okay?
2018 and 2022.
And 20,
right?
Yeah, in 2022. FIFA decided that they were going to release, and I'm really cutting this really short, but you get the point. There was a 49-page document that FIFA released, which basically covered up, but not a good word, but kind of glossed over, how's that sound? Kind of glossed over his findings. Turns out Michael Garcia was so irate over this 49-page report that FIFA put out, which basically didn't do his report any justice. His report was 430 pages.
Right.
Okay.
And they cherry-picked little pieces that made them look in the best light possible, and used that as their summary so that they could try to take the air out of his balloon, so to speak. And he got pretty upset about that.
Yeah, he was really angry about it. He ended up quitting over the whole thing. Right. He resigned. He was so mad about it. Basically, what he found was, even though there wasn't any, he could not find any direct evidence of Qatar's officials buying votes. He wasn't given the opportunity to talk to everybody that was involved. There was consultants that he didn't have access to that he should have had access to. There were people who were questioning the bidding process that he wasn't allowed to touch. He couldn't go anywhere near. Every time he tried to open the door was slammed in his face. Basically, he looked into Vladimir Putin, who was the prime minister of Russia at the time, and he pretty much stated that Putin met with at least a half a dozen FIFA voters in the months before the 2010 vote. But again, Russia's bid committee was cleared of any wrongdoing. Right? There was no evidence of collusion with other bids, no violations of rules on gifts, no signs that the Russians tried to exert any influence at all on the voters. But that was on the surface. He was never allowed to dig in deeper into anything. Okay? He didn't have any subpoena power, even though there was direct and indirect favors done for votes. Okay, but he wasn't allowed to pursue them. There was a $2 million payment deposited into the account of a FIFA voter's 10-year-old daughter that he wasn't allowed to follow up. How did the 10-year-old get $2 million? Right? Just they couldn't do it. He wasn't allowed to go anywhere near it. Well, turns out his report, his full 430-page report, just happened to find its way into the hands of a German newspaper. So now here's where things get a little goofy, right? And this is where you kind of question FIFA a little bit, because FIFA decided that instead of the German newspaper publishing the report, FIFA was just going to publish the report themselves. Okay, and they're trying to, and they said they were going to do this because they wanted transparency. Now, let's be honest. This report was never going to see the light of day if the German newspaper didn't see it, right?
Yeah,
if it was never good.
They could have been transparent, but they decided not to be at that point.
Right, and it was weird because FIFA never contacted or asked anybody about this report even though it was sitting on somebody's desk for at least a year. FIFA didn't want anything to do with this until that German newspaper got a hold of it. And now all of a sudden, they're trying to make it look like they are, they're white as the driven snow, right? They're as clean can be. When they're not. They're really not. They said something like, for the sake of transparency, FIFA welcomes the news that this report is now finally been published. Well, you've had it for a year. You've been sitting on it. You knew what it was about. You knew what was going on. You knew everything about it. You just chose not to do anything about it because you didn't want anybody to know. And it just shows you what happens whenever you have something as powerful as FIFA and there's no oversight at all. There's none, right? It's FIFA and that's it. There's no anything, and it's sad that this is happening, but at least it's out. Sad as that may be.
Yeah. Well, the conspiracy theorist in me would say that over the last 2 minutes of the conversation, I caught maybe 20 seconds of it. Maybe the Russians are shutting down our Comcast.
You think? I think.
But I will say that from what I caught from what you said and from what I today, there isn't much that can be done as a result of the report. However, the report is out there. The information is out there right now. I've seen that there are people who are being hailed into court here in the United States. On as many charges, corruption and fraud charges, as we can pull them in on, and get them extradited to bring in. So, it may be a slow drip in terms of what happens, and you may never get to the top. Putin knew what he was doing to get that bid. He always knows what he's doing.
He always does. Yeah.
The world in the way he wants it to be, and he's a smart chess player. I mean, got to give him credit. The guy knows how to go up to the line and play every move that he needs to make. And he seems like he's 1 step or 2 steps or 3 steps ahead of anybody that can bring him down. I'm not so sure that that's the long-term play that will help him survive, or other folks like him that may be in our political world. Who knows? We don't need to talk too much about that. But the point is, it's a dangerous game. He seems to know how to play it pretty well. The smaller fish may be getting fried. We'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, it's funny. He knows how to pick and choose which battles to fight. That's for sure, boy. He really does.
So, good stuff. As always, this is really interesting stuff. I really want to follow back up on this, how it evolves from this report, because this is really new. Not new in the sense that it's been out since 2014, but new in the sense that we have the full report accessible to the public at this point in time. So, that all evolves. Let's check back in on that as that story evolves. And in the meantime, let's take a little break and come back with some happy news. Happy in some ways. We have to talk about the U.S. men's team. Maybe a little surprising and head-scratching in other ways, but at least it's something